Good morning. There's always one, isn't there?
I'll take that as a triple good morning.
Good morning and warm welcome to our council meeting for the 19th of May, and something like coming back to normal with public joining us in person this morning, but also a number of people on Zoom with us. So a very warm welcome, and it's a great pleasure to welcome Jeff from the Manawatū Lutheran Church. I understand, Jeff, this is the first time our Lutheran Church has joined us, so if you are very warm welcome, and if you'd like to open our meeting, we'd appreciate it.
Indeed, thank you. Marana.
You can take his mask off. Take it
I
off.
can take my mask off. Thank you. I've got glasses on so I can see what I'm talking about.
They won't fog up then.
We begin this council chamber sitting in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. We pray, gracious God, we are blessed to be here today, and we give you thanks for the beautiful recent rain that has refreshed this land and the warming sun that followed, allowing the countryside to be fed and watered in preparation for the coming cold winter. Lord, we give you thanks. For our Mayor, Helen Warboys, and her leadership of council, Lord, we give you thanks. For all the Shire councillors who govern the municipal matters of the Manawatū District Council, Deputy Mayor Michael Ford, Grant Hadfield, Shane Casey, Stuart Campbell, Alison Short, Andrew Quarry, Heather G. Taylor, Phil Marsh and Steve Bielski, Lord, we give you thanks and pray that they think and act wisely, fairly, and in the best interests of the land and the people of the Shire. For all matters before this council meeting today, Lord, may your peace prevail so that everything is said and done in harmony and cooperation, and to your glory, Lord. Lord, we give you thanks. For our country, Aotearoa, New Zealand, may it be blessed with safety and peace. Lord, we particularly pray that COVID will be and can be controlled and eradicated soon. Lord, we give you thanks. For all these things and whatever else is on our hearts and minds, we lift them up to you, Lord, and we give you thanks. Amen.
Amen.
Right.
So is there anything you'd like to share with us within your community that you work in?
COVID has been a rather domineering factor in everyone's life of late, and we've been trying to play the Artful Dodger. Unfortunately, that hasn't worked too well. A lot of our people have been affected just more recently. Apart from that, being pastor of the parish of Trinity here in Fielding and St Luke's in Palmerston North creates its joys and its challenges. Getting used to people, as you might have guessed, I have a very distinctive Australian accent. Now let's see, on the 26th of this month, I will be in the country 11 months. So,
Welcome.
yeah, I am getting used to but the great joy I find is that people here like people just about everywhere else. Not very much difference between the psyche and the way we act and interact with people between Australians, New Zealanders and Australians, until we get the rugby pitch. Or the netball or cricket or whatever. And then it's all gloves on and friendships. But but the great thing is, that when the match is over, whatever it is, the spirit is there, and people on both sides of the ditch can put their animosities aside, put their ferocity aside, and go and have a beer or a wine or whatever suits them. And which is a great thing to see, really is. We are born and we have a kindred spirit through the Anzac coalition, and that is an enduring thing that will live with us. And it's great to be a servant here with that coalition, with that that will and that desire to work with each other, alongside each other, most of the time. I had the great joy recently, well, joy/sorrow, of prevailing over the funeral of John Whitelock. And that was a really good example of community coming out in force, because we know John had a lot of influence, and in the Whitelock family, a lot of influence here in Fielding, up at the high school, and other things as well, and throughout the entire Manawatū and Aotearoa community as well. So, and representation of the community who came to the funeral was very, very pleasing to see. So, any questions? If I may, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. Very warm welcome. Gosh, it's nearly a year. I remember going to your investiture, and so it's great to see that you've settled in and into the community with your family. So, and thank you for joining us in person today. It does make a big difference.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, have a good day.
Indeed, and God bless your discussions.
Thank you. Right, apologies, none today. We have a full team. Requests for leave of absence, there are none, so we can go straight to the confirmation of minutes to page 6, and we have a resolution there. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please.
Your Worship, I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on 5th of May 2022 be adopted as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Short. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 5, declaration of interest. Any topics on our agenda today that elected members need to declare a potential conflict? No? Great. So we can go straight to our public forum, and it's great to have the public forum back on our agenda. And welcome to Mark. Mark, if you'd like to join us up at the top there of the table. I think everyone knows Mark, so warm welcome back to council. And I understand you're going to speak to us about road safety.
Morena, Your Worship, Mayor Warboys, councillors, chief executive, management, staff and members of the public. It's a privilege to be here this morning for the first council meeting open to the public in 2022, which, as you will be well aware, is a local election year. It's been a long time between drinks, 9 months in fact. No mind to the public present and those watching online. A new experience, but what is now a familiar one for council. The last time the chamber was in this configuration was a year ago tomorrow, and what was probably a record attendance at a council meeting was present to witness the final decision to establish a Māori ward in Manawatū District. It was a road taken with a few speed bumps, detours and giveaways, but one where this district reached its destination on its long journey to give tangata whenua a deserved voice at this table. I'm thankful to those who made this happen, and I hope those 3 councillors who voted against the decision can better understand now, a year on tomorrow, the benefit this will bring to this district from October. 2 particular people were in this room that day and are not today. One of them was this district's first Māori councillor, Mrs. Barbara Cameron, and as it's my first opportunity to personally acknowledge the immense loss of her passing, I'd like to do that. I know many of you will have been Barbara's friend or worked alongside her for many years, and they can coexist, of course, and then it's been a difficult time. So I want to extend my condolences to the Cameron whānau and for you, the elected members and staff of the Manawatū District Council. It was nice to see Barbara's son presented with her Queen's Service Medal 2 weeks ago.
Point of order, Your Worship. I thought the presentation was on road safety.
Thank you. Are we getting to the road
We are
safety
getting to
topic?
that. This is the preamble and all will be.
Thank you.
reviewed soon.
Otherwise you may run out of time to cover.
Yes,
your
I'm
topic.
aware of that. I have time. The other person that I'd like to recognise is former councillor Hilary Humphrey. Hilary's contribution to this district in her 5.5 years on this council and as a resident for decades was impressive. Hilary paved the way for access and engagement with council, including info, into ways people can understand, adopt a community development strategy, and always had tangata whenua's interests at heart, and advocated for a safer Combolton road. I wish her and her whānau all the best in their future endeavours. That leads us nicely to what I'm here to kōrero about today. And I'm not just referring to issues on Combolton Road, although I know issues remain when I discuss road safety in Manawatū District. There have been far too many vehicle accidents this year on roads in the Manawatū-Wanganui region. 16 people have died on our region's roads, and most of these 7 were in Manawatū District. There were 7 deaths in the last calendar month alone. In the last 3 weeks, it's become more evident we need to drive safer. Lees Road, Helcombe, Kairanga and Cheltenham. In the space of 12 days, 3 deaths. It is the road toll that is heartbreaking. These are residents that won't be going home to their families. Families receiving the dreaded telephone call or knock on the door to tell them their loved one has passed away. 1 death on the road is too many, but to have 7 within 5 months, and we're not even halfway through the year yet, is utterly dreadful. It seems lately that every day you open up the newspaper, the online news, your phone, there is a report of another accident on Manawatū roads. Last week was Road Safety Week, and the theme was Road Safety Heroes. Still, 7 people died on New Zealand roads. You can all be road safety heroes by encouraging drivers to slow down, by being alert and not driving too tired or fatigued, by not driving after drinking or drug impaired, by driving to the conditions, by maintaining a safe following distance, by following the give way rules, by buckling up, by not getting distracted, by designing safer roads and pathways, by encouraging public transport use. And there are many other actions that can be taken to encourage safe driving. As winter approaches and the Queen's birthday and Matariki long weekends, I'm urging you to help promote these habits, to make some steps in ensuring drivers become more diligent. I want to emphasise that because there will be people travelling in and out of this district on their holidays, and we want them to reach their destinations and return home safely and alive. I don't drive, but I'm still concerned about this issue and the number of vehicle accidents and deaths that have occurred. I'm concerned because these are people, and while we don't know why it's happened, it is something that their families and our community are left to deal with. An accident's social cost is astronomical. There was an article in the Manawatū Standard 2 weeks ago with the viewpoints of emergency services and what experiences they are left with after attending accidents. I think we often forget about them. The fire, police and ambulance first responders and members of the public who are first on the scene. They have families too. As you drive home tonight, I hope you will consider what I've said today and have a safe journey. And to Mayor Warboys and Mr. Harris, who I know celebrate their birthdays tomorrow, I hope you have a safe journey home, so you're able to celebrate your birthdays with your families a hōhō. Hare huratou for tomorrow. Kia haumāru te haere, safe travels, and I'm delighted to take your questions.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you for raising that with us. Are there any questions for Mark? Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm just a little bit interested about the figures that you've quoted. I'm taking it you did mention Manawatū-Wanganui as a district, and so I jumped on last night to have a look at the road deaths by local body area up until the 17th of May 2022. That's actually how current they keep them up on the unbelievable in a way. And it was quite interesting. And I looked at the figures from 2018 to 2022. So you're right, 2022 hasn't actually been that flash a year with 3 fatalities on a local 100km/h road, 2 fatalities on a local 70km/h road. And interestingly enough, if we look at the fatalities between 2018 and 2022, comparing to, say, Palmerston North, Rangitikei, Tararua and Horowhenua. It's all much of a muchness, really. So the figures that I looked at last night show that this year we've had 5 fatalities on our both local and state highways of both 70 and 100 kilometres an hour. And since 2018, it's gone 61635. So I think we can understand 2021 when a lot of people weren't out driving. But I just thought it was actually quite important to actually put it into context for our district rather than the wider area and looking at some comparisons. So sorry if I haven't asked a question, but it was just seeking a bit of clarification around the Manawatū district as opposed to the broader area.
Thank you. Through you, case I can answer, Councillor Hatfield. Through you, Your Worship. There was one death that was recorded as in Palmerston North, where it was in Manawatū on Rangitikei Road. So I will note that. The point is that one death is too many on the roads, and the fact there have been 7 in the Manawatū district, including that one on Rangitikei Road, is too many.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Casey.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Mark, thank you for your kōrero this morning. Just, I can see through your chat with us today, you're very clear about providing leadership in this space, but what else are you thinking around to what, council can do to
Time through you, Worship. I'm thinking Facebook posts, newspaper, online, radio. I know the Mayor does frequent radio interviews. So just getting the word out there that we need to drive safer, particularly as those winter holidays are coming up.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mark. I can see you well researched that. Do you know from those figures how many were rural versus urban accidents and how many were single vehicle accidents versus multiple vehicle?
Well, through you, Worship, I do, because through the Ministry of Transport, which is a source I presume Councillor Hatfield was referring to, those statistics are recorded, and the crashes in Manawatū have been on Markino Road. You might be familiar with that one just out of Fielding here on the way to Stanway. There was a couple on Penny Road. One's been recorded is excluded, which means they believe it was caused by other causes and not or on purpose. So there was one, but there is still one recorded on Penny Road, a 40 to 59-year-old female. There was one on Rangitikei Road, which has been recorded as in Palmerston North, a 25-year-old man. One on Halcombe Road, Fielding, just a couple of weeks ago, a motorcyclist over 60 years old, male, and one on Longburn Rogatia Road on the 8th of May, Mother's Day. That was a 40 to 59-year-old male in a van, and there was one on Carmalton Road, Cheltenham, on the 10th of May, just last week, in fact, and that was over 60-year-old male.
All rural.
I believe so. They are all rural.
Thanks, Mark. And you may be aware that at a council meeting recently, we had a paper around looking to reduce the speed on a number of our rural roads network, and those recommendations were passed. So it is something that council looks at, and there will be more of that road safety program coming to council as well. So it is something that we keep a close eye on and to try and make sure that we can get the speed on particularly our rural roads, as safe as possible. But like you say, it's about people observing those speed restrictions and driving to the conditions. So I thank you for your time today. Thank you for your preparation and your research, and and we wish you a good day.
And I am pleased with that, particularly in Halcombe, where I'm from. It's been a long time that the speed needs to be slowed down through there. So well done. And those measures are something that you can do here at council, and that will help.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Right, there are no presentations today and no late items, so we can go straight to page 10 and This is the Audit and Risk Committee quarterly performance report to the 31st of March. Amanda's not with us today.
Stuart's online.
Yeah, Stuart's online. But Shane, is there anything that you want to highlight there before I pass over to the Chair of Audit and Risk?
No, there's nothing really. I think the result is a solid one for us. You'll see on the dashboard that everything's looked pretty good in terms of the grading dials. You know, and as you look through the activity statements, there's actually called back a number of KPIs where we were not doing quite so well at the 6-month mark. Made some ground. Financial results are looking healthy. Maybe I'll let Stuart add to that, but by and large, the only other thing I'll draw your attention to is that the CapEx report. When you look at the actual spend, it's low, but when you look at spend plus commitments, and commitments are funds where we've got active purchase orders that are carrying work, then it's up above, you know, almost the high 60%. So looking pretty good for the year, given the amount of work that we took on. So leave the rest to Stuart.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, look, I endorse those comments. Pretty much what I was going to say as well. But the financial performance is looking pretty good at this point. At the 6-month, sorry, the 9-month mark to the end of March. Our revenue is ahead of budget. The main increase was development contributions being higher than expected. Good to see those coming in. Shows positive signs of growth and activity in the district. The rates revenue is pretty much per budget, and then our expenditure is about 2 million below. A little bit of concern, of course, in the personnel cost area, with a couple of vacancies there. But other operational expenditure is below budget as well. So we're tracking for about a $3 million surplus above where we were expecting to be at this point. So, you know, I think that's pretty satisfactory. Just the other thing I wanted to highlight, which as Chief Executive touched on, was the capital expenditure program. Continual year after year issue, are we spending, or are we up to date on our capital spend program? When I first looked at the report, it looked a bit concerning with our spend year to date being 25.6 million of a budget of 64.3. That's about 40% of the projected works being completed. But when I went back to check on where we were at the same time last year, we were looking at a spend of 18.1 over a budget of 60.7, so that's 30%. So this time last year we'd only done 30% of the work. This year we've done 40, so we're actually doing somewhat better. So that was encouraging to see. Although there's still a lot of work to do before the end of the year if we're going to complete all of that 64.3 million of work. So generally, I'd say well done to the team on managing money pretty well. So well done. And most of the KPIs look pretty good. There's not a lot of reds there. Yeah, it was a satisfactory report, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's open it up for questions or comments. Our team, many of us were at the Audit and Risk Committee and went through these the financial information in great detail. But if there's any other questions that you've thought of since then, Councillor Ford.
Just a question to Councillor Campbell. Councillor, you mentioned this time last year we were at 30 million of the capital expenditure. Can you recall roughly how we finished in terms of the year? What percentage?
The top of my head, it was around 70% of work, which was consistent with what we've done the previous 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. So no further comments. Councillor Campbell, would you like to move the recommendation on page 10?
I would move that the council receive the quarterly performance report and the treasury report to 31 March 2022.
Thank you. I have a seconder, please. Councillor Short. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you for that report and for those comments. Right, so moving on to the minutes from other committees. This is for our information only and comment. So on page 42 is the Community Development Committee draft minutes. So the only thing I'm checking, I know these are draft minutes, I'm just checking that the recorded vote against the apology is correct. Seems I'm trying to recall that.
Sorry, what?
It says Councillor Shane Casey recorded his vote against the apology.
Yeah.
Councillor Belsky was away, and I'm thinking, is that correct? I'm trying to think back.
Interesting question. Given the nature of it, Councillor Belsky was away on annual leave for some time. I understand through the chair that the email wasn't passed on to the chair, so we were not updated on the morning that Steve was unable to come in, or Councillor Belsky.
Okay. So the wording that's there is correct. That and that will go to our next Community Development Committee. Councillor Belsky.
Yeah, I was, maybe I fell short of not contacting early enough, but I was a bit disappointed to see that because I was laid up crook as crook and very crook and with fatigue, and I was in bed and I couldn't even watch Zoom at all. So it was a bit discerning to see that. I was opposed in the apology, so that's just me, but I may have done things a little bit wrong, but I'm
Certainly if I was aware of the information, Your Worship, my vote probably wouldn't have gone that way, Councillor Belsky. So I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. I'll take it on the chin. It is what it is. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson.
I regret to say I'm a bit confused, Your Worship. So just a bit of clarification on process. My understanding was Councillor Belsky was on leave. Is that correct?
No, I wasn't on leave.
It wasn't on leave. Thank you. That's what I thought.
The other meeting I was.
Thank you. Councillor G. Taylor.
Happy to comment on the rest of the meeting as the chairperson.
Yes.
Look, it was a really good meeting. I love the meetings that we have where we have people in to speak to us around what they're doing and the work in the community, which is what this meeting was predominantly about. We also elected a new deputy chair, which was Councillor Short, so that's great. Really pleased to have someone with Councillor Short's experience in this community development space to support me there. So yes, very pleased to have Councillor Short on. And then we had the funding accountability reports. So another really good turnout. No one didn't show up, which was great. And the work that's going on, there's a couple of programs which were affected by COVID, but I think that's only to be expected, and they are doing a little catch up, playing a bit of catch up at the moment as we move into the next stage. So that's sort of the bulk of it. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer what I can answer.
Any questions, comments in relation to those minutes? They're reasonably self-explanatory, and I agree. It was really, it was really great to see the passion and enthusiasm and the outcomes that our community groups through our partnership service, priority services contracts are achieving in the community in spite of the lockdown and COVID, etc. So thank you. They were for your information. The next one, also for your information, is the draft minutes from the last Audit and Risk Committee. Councillor Campbell, anything there you wish to highlight?
First, I just want to acknowledge Deputy Chair John Falk for stepping in and chairing that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but I did view the meeting on the YouTube recording, and he did a great job along with everybody attending, doing a good contribution to that meeting. So thank you, everyone. Not too much to highlight. We covered off the Audit New Zealand final report following their audit of the June 2021 financial statements. There was only two small items that they highlighted for attention there. I don't believe either of those were significant. So encouraging to see that our internal controls appear to be operating very well. We did, normally we've been doing a visit to council facility from time to time. This month's schedule was to the roading team, but unfortunately that was rained out. We couldn't go, but the roading team and health and safety officers presented a good report to the meeting. And just the other one I wanted to highlight, there was a good discussion on Three Waters, mainly around highlighting the significant risks that Three Waters proposal puts to this council and this community. And I think it's just worth highlighting that once again, even though we've highlighted that before, that there is a significant risk to both our organisation and our district from the proposals. One, to the organisation in terms of the potential loss of staff and inability for us to fully complete appropriate Three Waters work while the transition team is in place, and then the additional costs in terms of increased rates and stranded overheads that might be placed on the district ratepayers following the withdrawal of those services from the council building into a separate entity. So yeah, I just want to highlight that one again. Good discussion. Thank you everyone again for contributing that, and I think it's important we note that. That's the way we've done it.
Thank you. Thank you. We also acknowledged Clint Ramu as our auditor for the great way he's worked with council over his time as our auditor, and so that was his last report back to council, and he introduced Debbie to us, Pereira, who will be taking over as our appointed auditor for the next term. So any questions, comments in relation to those draft minutes? No? Excellent, thank you. Right, so we can move on to the officers' report, and the first one, we start on page 55, and this is the hearing of submissions for our waste management and minimisation plan. And before we open it up to hear from our submitters, we need to look at the three recommendations there on page 55. And I'm happy to move that the council receives the report on the hearing of submissions to the draft waste management and minimisation plan 2022 to 2028. That council receives the submissions on the draft waste management and minimisation plan 2022-2028, and the council hears from submitters who wish to speak to council. If I could have a seconder, Councillor Ford. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Against? Those motions are carried. Thank you. So now we have the opportunity from the 93 submissions that were submitted to us. We have 5 from our community who would like to speak to us, and we have some of those here with us today in the public gallery. And so Rethink Waste Manawatū. Now, I understand that's Angela, that's you, and Sue. Absolutely, thank you. Welcome, come and join us up at the top table there. And we're on page 142 of the submissions. Good morning and welcome to our council meeting, and thank you for making a submission to this and your passion and interest in coming here this morning to speak to it. So we have read your submission, but you're very welcome to take us through the highlights, and then there may be some questions.
Kia ora koutou. Just to point out that I submitted individually as well as our group submitting, so we've combined our times. I hope that's okay with you. We think that might make it more cohesive and less repetitive. Yeah, we'd like to start with just quickly introducing ourselves. So the group is not a formal constituted group. It's kind of largely organised through a Facebook group, although So for example is not a Facebook user, so there's wider people than that. The way that submission was kind of worked through was I put forward a draft and I got feedback from a number of different people, gradually kind of crafted it to something that included all the feedback. Yeah, so just to introduce ourselves individually, I'm Angela Baker. I live in Tottenham Village, have done for 30 odd years. I have a background in teaching and community organisations largely, and more recently psychology. I currently still work part-time privately as a counselling psychologist. Velma.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Wilma Sands. I live here in Fielding. I'm in Kimbolton Road. I'm a retired minister and I live a retired life, which is lovely. Not usually 4 minutes for retired ministers, but yeah. And I have a passion for stirring.
We need people like you.
No. You can't stir in council.
Oh, Andrew,
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Welcome, Sue.
I'm Sue Godbears. Greetings from a very soggy Pohongina this morning. Very soggy. We had to get a 12-ton digger to clear our driveway of 2 sides yesterday. Oh. So at least we had one clear day between the rain. And so I'm a new resident in the Manawatū District. I've only been here for 2.5 years. And I have a background in all sorts of things, advising people how to grow commercial horticultural crops, waste minimisation and waste management professionally with councils, and most recently resource consent, private, resource consent consultancy with a surveying company, and I've just retired on the 1st of April.
Excellent. Welcome.
We also want to just briefly talk about our own personal kind of vision and passion for this. Do you want to start with that, Sue?
Well, one of my wild dreams for Manawatū District is that the Resource Recovery Centre at Kawakawa Road be somewhere where a well-managed community group could provide a safe tribal place for people to work where they don't fit into society easily. Say, for example, they're recovering from mental health issues or something like that, and that they help the public as they come with their trailer load of waste to separate the gibboard out into a dedicated pile and separate out the organic stuff into a dedicated pile and all those sorts of things, so that the very last little 5 or 10% actually needs to go to landfill, and just to help support the education of the community by doing that and getting alongside people and giving a hand up rather than a hand out to those who can't find meaningful work in the community, and to the residents to help lift their understanding of waste minimisation.
Roma, do you want to say anything?
Well, I'm here today to support the council and to, one of my dreams is that we can all work together for the good of Manawatū. And you'll hear from me a little later, and I'm not going to stir a lot.
So I have a vision, a hope for a really holistic kind of recycling kind of operation. And in January, I went to visit the Zero Waste project in Raglan, which is absolutely, to me, absolutely inspiring. They have achieved something like 75% diversion from landfill. A little similar to Sue's vision, you were kind of referencing a community organisation and in Raglan it's a business, it's a social enterprise, so it's but they make a real point of upskilling and embracing employees. So they have people coming in who part of their goal is that people who leave this organisation, and often people stay because they're really good employers, but people who leave much more upskilled and more employable than they came in. So that vision of not just turning around our whole attitude to waste and reducing the amount that goes to landfill, but that whole community development approach, which engages the whole community in a way that I think is less likely to happen if it was just run by council. So I don't mean to use the just word in a derogatory way, but because it's part of the community, I think community is more open to listening to the messages, to behaviour change around how they manage their own waste, and it's a source of pride for the community. So I just love to see Fielding, Manawatū be a centre for that kind of an operation. Okay, enough of that.
Sorry. Okay, so what I've got in my box here, sorry. All know what this is. So this is the Fielding Civic Centre, right? Okay, so the dimensions of it are approximately, from Infomaps, 26 metres by 50 metres, and I'm guessing it's 10 metres high. I didn't pay a surveyor to find out high. It might be 8 metres, but it's not more than 10. Okay, so this is the literal size and scale of what I'm about to talk about. So this, according to MFE, Ministry for the Environment, this is the total volume of uncompacted rubbish, refuse, that our entire district is sending to landfill. So it's a lot if you think of the size of the actual building, right? So the thing is that you're the governance group, as you know, and you are thinking about the waste policy of council. And in order to have good governance, we would encourage you to think, rather than the approximately 6,700 tonnes of waste to landfill that the council control collections provide, that this is the amount that the council can control. You manage the collections. It's largely the blue bag collection. Okay, so this is based on the assumption, and I've got the maths here to give to. Is Brittany here? Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I've got the maths. If you imagine a rubbish bag I'm assuming it's a 70 litre standard New Zealand rubbish bag, and that the average weight of it is 6 kilograms based on a 500 bag sample. That's what I would have done when I worked for Papakura District Council, into our own elected representatives. So what I'm saying is that if that means, you know, that if you do the volume and the maths with the weight and tons, because rubbish is always discussed in terms of tons, not cubic meters. So an uncompacted bag is 70 litres and it weighs 6 kilograms on average. So therefore this, in relation to the size of the civic centre, which is the orange bit, this is the volume of the council controlled collections, but this is the volume of the total waste to landfill. And why is that? The reason is that MFE have said, was the WMP draft and this discussion is about 2020 data, so it's not last year's data. And so on the MFE website, which I've cited in my metrics here, they're saying that 740 kilograms per capita is produced, okay, of waste. So 0.74 tons times, and in 2020, I'm assuming that you have 31,000, well, we have 31,700 residents, okay? So that means that there's this much total waste. So therefore, by default, the rest of it is waste to landfill from commercially collected contractors, okay? Enviro waste management, you know, it might be a private collection, it might be a school waste, it might be some other institutional NGO, or it might be commercial business waste. So the thing is, one of the introductory points that we would like to make is that the waste management plan consider the whole waste of the district and not, they've paid really great attention to detail of the council control waste, but not the full waste. And given that this is sort of an elephant in the room, you know, that's the point I'm wanting to make. So the thing is, what is the waste made up of? Well, based on the MFE data about, because you remember, council hasn't reported on this waste here in the WMP. So therefore I'm defaulting to the MFE average New Zealand waste. Okay, so the big ticket items are things that you would not find in your council controlled bag collection. Okay, this biggest ticket item is, would anyone like to guess? I forgot to bring a Whippers chocolate to throw to the person. I meant to bring a chocolate. What's the big ticket item?
It looks like it's green waste.
It's construction and demolition.
Oh, there you go.
waste. Okay, so that's not in here. Mostly. I mean, people will put the odd little bit of wood or a brick or something in their bag, but mainly it's not. Okay, the next one, guess what the next one is? It's potentially hazardous waste, and that's generally not in here. I mean, there'll be the odd thing, okay, but generally most of this is actually contaminated soil, right? So that's nothing to do with your council controlled collections, right? The construction and demolition waste, this is rubble, timber, you know, all that sort of stuff. That is generally not in your council controlled waste, and I'm just inviting you to include it in your waste management and minimisation plan. The next big ticket item is in here, and it's a similar, the WMP is saying that 38% of the average rubbish bag is organic, mainly food, but some, you know, cut flowers and garden waste, and so 15% of all waste to New Zealand landfills is organic, okay? And that's what makes the leachate, that's what generates the gas, which landfill companies claim that they capture 94% of it, but I doubt it. Anyway, and then it's plastic, paper, textiles, metal, sanitary paper, rubber, sewage sludge and glass, okay? So the thing is that, yeah, I would just encourage the waste management plan to look at the whole of the waste and not just the 27%. I encourage you to look at the 100% and include the 73%, okay? Because even though you don't control the commercial collections, there's all sorts of ways, which Brittany is very aware of, that you can have an angle on that, and I'll speak later to waste, okay?
You happy to take questions as we go?
Yeah,
Councillor Quarry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd like Hamish to respond to that if he could, please.
Thank you. Yeah, today was really about hearing from from petitions, but I do see that there is an opportunity for us to explain, because we do work in that space.
I wonder if because Sue's going to talk a little bit more further on about the commercial waste briefly, so maybe after that, would that be okay?
Yep.
Yes, if you complete your submission. Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Can I just ask a question because I didn't understand it? So could you just, when you started, you were talking about the community centre, a little bit of orange. I'm sorry, I haven't quite grasped what that is.
Okay, so this is a scale model. If you're standing on either Aorangi or Stafford, this is the building you see. It's a two-story, well, it's sort of the equivalent of a two-story building, a bit bigger than a two-story.
Yep.
It's 26 metres wide, and it would fill this volume. It's 60 metres long, right, and it's about 10 metres high.
Okay, I think I'm getting it.
Okay,
Yep.
so if you filled however many million bags equivalent of uncompacted rubbish, I mean, we all know that rubbish goes straight into a compactor and it probably halves away because it's sort of filled with air and things like that.
Right. It's a quantity of rubbish
It's a volumetric.
by comparison to the civic centre, just to give us
just to give you
a mental
an
picture
idea
of how big it
of
is.
how
Yep. Sorry, I hadn't grasped
the
it.
waste problem is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belsky.
Just a quick question relating to the very first subject you brought up about having people there to help isolate the different products, and they've got a few issues that helps them get going again. My little vision is to have the Grumpy Man's Club. I think it's in Wanganui, dissecting all of our electrical stuff. We can do that now if we pay for it, but it'd be good to have it freely given in there, and televisions and
There's all sorts of
and all dissected there. But it evidently it is in the program, in the plan. So yeah, so that's one of my.
Thank you.
To take those to pieces. Thank you.
Right, let's get back to you submitting to us.
My turn? Yep. Mayor, my presentation is to do with the curbside organics collection. And I do want to say that we strongly support this proposal as far as it goes. Because it would divert 38% of the current blue bag collection from the landfill. And the government, in its emissions reduction plan announced this week, stated that most communities should be doing this by 2030. So yeah, we're on our way. We know that the potential savings of food waste being diverted from landfill, which is $46,000 per year, at the present $20 per tonne levy. Tonne? I'm a foreigner. I never know which way to pronounce tonne or tonne. Anyway, and 1,380,000 by the time the levy goes up to $60 per tonne in 2024. We're wondering if the waste minimisation levy could be used to cover some of the implementation costs. We support curbside organic collection covering the 4 villages, Rongatia, Sanson, Halcombe, Imatanga Beach, as well as Fielding. However, we're really strongly against 240 litre bins, as that the size of the bin discourages sorting and recycling. It's a lot easier when you have a huge bin to just toss everything in there. And if you make it smaller, it makes people think, oh, hang on a minute, am I going to fill it too soon, too fast? Let's remember that in my kitchen, for instance, we do a little bit of composting and a little bit of non-composting. And I never, ever in our house, there's only 2 of us in our house, but I never filled one of those. It's only ever at the most 3/4 full. And it might have some organic material in it. So I reckon that a smaller bin plus the tiny bin would be better use of money. It might cost, it might be cheaper too. So, in summary, we believe that this service could be charged through the rates, but that there could be an opt-out option for those who already compost. Because a lot of people say, oh, but we compost. But do you compost everything? Shh, don't ask that. And not everybody composts, we know that too. So anyway, that's my submission.
Thanks, Roma. Thank you. What you're thinking around, having an opt-out option, the reality of that is to keep the cost as low as possible. It needs an all-in or an all-out.
Yeah, that's easier. That's much easier. It would be harder to monitor. But it's one solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry,
You've gone too far.
sorry, it's me.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I pressed that thing too hard. Now, so one of the things that we'd really like to make a point of is that waste minimisation is a social issue. We don't believe that it is only an infrastructural issue. And I think the waste plan has done a great job at showing a lot of detail about the waste infrastructure that supports the council control collection. So that's great. And as well as that, we'd love to invite you to consider that waste is a social issue, and that means behaviour change. Okay, so I think it might be possible that the council has focused on awareness raising. Now, I know that on the open road, the speed limit is 100, okay? But does that mean that I will never speed, even though I am aware of what the speed limit is, okay? The majority of people that are caught speeding, right, or that do speed, they all actually know. I bet every one of them knows that 100 is the limit, okay? So awareness actually doesn't change behaviour, right? And so I'm just wanting to say that there are all sorts of waste minimisation tools out there, and I'll just give an example of one which is tried and true. It's been around for at least 20 or 30 years, called community-based social marketing, where somebody who is either internal or external to council looks at, what is the problem? Like, I'll give an example. We've got 16.7% contamination in our curbside recycling commingled bins. That is a real problem for an operator. You are smart environmental. It's a serious problem. And why is it happening? Okay. And so I'll call it CBSM for short. CBSM has a really tried and true methodology. I've done it myself on a number of occasions to change a particular behaviour. So, there's great opportunity for doing CBSM projects, whether they're internally or externally from council, to address things like, I call it legal dumping, you call it fly tipping, don't you? Okay, I bet, by the way, fly tipping is about a millimetre line of this. It's a very visible and very annoying behaviour, but it's not the elephant in the room. I do acknowledge it's really annoying and it shouldn't happen. But things that the WMP draft has outlined are things like the contamination, the diversion of the majority of this average rubbish bag, which is recyclable, curbside recyclable materials and organic waste. That could be another specific behaviour change thing that council could do. the method of how the curbside food waste collection is implemented. You don't just say, oh, this is the new service, because people actually won't know how to engage with it. It's actually quite an art in getting the community to really understand and engage and start and participate in it correctly. It's harder than you think. And so, yeah, anyway, I'm just saying that there's a great opportunity to do that. And what are my other points? Yes, that this can't just happen with the existing resource that council appears to have. I think I'd warmly encourage you to do what the waste assessment document that fed into the WMP suggested, which is to have a dedicated role for a waste minimisation person. That means a behaviour change person, not someone who understands how to write and manage collection contracts. That's a completely different professional discipline. So a waste minimisation person, whether they're internal or external from council, you just need, yeah, I'd just encourage you that you need a dedicated role in that.
Okay, so I'm not going to speak at length about pyrolysis, but I am going to point out that we disagree with, we don't support pyrolysis. I just want to make 4 main points around that. So a really important environmental aspect of it is that the emission of dioxins as part of emissions to air, that dioxins are chemicals that are created through burning plastics. So many of you will be familiar with these little things, which I've only just recently learned is packed in, what's the terminology?
Polystyrene.
It's polystyrene that hasn't been expanded. I didn't know that. So once this kind of plastic or any polystyrene is burnt, dioxins are created. The dioxins are not created if this is put in landfill. Once the dioxins are created, they're forever chemicals. They don't go away. So, you know, that's a real deep concern for us about the pyrolysis process. The other thing is that there's no mixed waste pyrolysis plants in the first world currently, and we don't want to be the first. There are mixed waste incineration plants, gasification, but not pyrolysis. So there's no track record for this particular technology. Thirdly, pyrolysis is inconsistent with circular economy. I think it's really important to get that point home somehow, like, because your documents are saying that pyrolysis is a part of your move towards a circular economy. There's any number of sources you can go to that will point out that circular economy and pyrolysis are totally inconsistent. The circular economy is about having resources that continue to be usable and go around in a circle. Pyrolysis is part of the phrase they use is take, make, and throw away, the linear economy. So once you've burnt your feedstock, you do not get another chance to use that resource. It's gone. It's dead end, it's linear. So there's no way you can describe that as circular. And fourthly, the pyrolysis de-incentivizes the circular economy solutions to waste. So if you kind of have this idea that you can neatly sort of tuck away all that nasty, dirty waste stuff by burning it, then why would anyone make any effort to do more recycling, to be better at diverting stuff out of their blue bags? So I do kind of wonder whether the fact that pyrolysis is on the table, even though it's not in the plan, and it's hard to understand why it's not in the plan because it's such a significant impact on how you deal with waste. But whether that's influenced the other contents of the plan, whether it's led to the plan being less ambitious than it could be, whether it's led to things like the idea of having a dedicated role not making it into the draft. Because if you know that you've got this landfill in the sky that you think you're going to use to burn your rubbish, then there's no need for these other measures. And I think, I was just going to, my last point really is, well, that there's lots of reasons why a dedicated role might be important, and just the point in history that we're at, where we're kind of lurching toward the that kind of cut-off point where we're creating an unlivable world with temperatures that are too high, and the other changes that come with climate change, that we really have to commit to making significant changes around waste, because waste is an area that contributes so much to climate change. So much of, and going to the top of the waste hierarchy, so much of our waste is produced unnecessarily. It's creating something that has no ongoing life, all the packaging and all that sort of stuff. Now, I know council can't directly influence or control that, but through lobbying and through education of the public and things can help whole society change in that direction of designing waste out of the process. Just to put a more positive spin on the idea of a dedicated role, central government is very obviously beginning a very active campaign to get a lot of change happening in the space because of the impact it will have on our emissions and our ability to reach our national targets around emissions. And that's going to create opportunity for councils to take advantage of those central government initiatives. With a dedicated role, you'd have somebody in place really proactively looking at how you can use those initiatives. Without that role, you're going to just wait and see what happens and not be in a position to take real advantage of that. So I'd strongly encourage you to reconsider that as a possibility. I think my sense is that financially there'd be more to gain than you'd lose out of that. Just through being able to take better advantage of any initiatives that come through.
Okay, so the second to last penultimate point that we'd like to make is about the commercially collected waste and what could be done about it, what council could do. Brittany, your policy lady, she explained to us that you were, can't remember if the solid waste bylaw already requires licensing of operators or that you would review it and you would require licensing of operators. So if you license your waste collectors, every waste collector that collects waste in the district outside of the council control collections would be required to report their tonnages, so that you wouldn't have to rely on MFE, slush data, okay, from the national average. Okay, so that's one thing that could happen. The other thing is that if you had a dedicated role, you could work alongside particularly commercial businesses. I know that Horizons Regional Council is already working alongside a large number of schools in the district, which is great, but that's not this council, is it? It's the Horizons Regional Council that funds Enviro schools. Or do you?
We put some funding into it.
Oh, sorry, okay.
They deliver it, we fund it.
Okay. Oh, you fund it and they deliver it. Ah, okay, so you are funding.
Yes.
Sorry, my apologies. Okay, I got it wrong. But an example that I'd give is, I think it was about 2005. It was when Anand Satyam was the Governor General, because I went to the celebration dinner. So Fonterra, the big Fonterra factory at Takanini, for example, just by changing their procurement policy, they saved $3 million a year. And so this is well after Rogernomics and the move to a market economy. You would think that every business was running lean and mean and all that sort of thing. But in fact, waste minimisation to manage the waste, that comes out of a site, it has to be managed in a holistic way. And so that's prevent, reduce, whatever. So, but just by you doing the prevent part of the waste, management hierarchy, they've saved, they didn't buy a whole lot of waste in the first place to send it to landfill, And I said to them at the time, I don't know if $3 million a year is a lot to you. And they said, oh yeah, that's a hell of a lot to us, So they were really chuffed, and they were also pleased to be able to have the skite about it because they won an award from the government in general. But so if council had a dedicated role, that waste minimisation person or contractor could work alongside local businesses and sites, building contractors, construction, demolition people, about how get the buy-in from the governance, the senior management of the organisation, and then work alongside the actual staff in the organisation, get champions who believe and own in-house and behaviour change, and to actually find out from the staff what actually will work, because unless it's going to be a bottom-up thing with the approval from the top down in any organisation, it won't work. If the top down are just telling this is the edict, we're now going to minimise our waste, or we're going to do better, it won't happen because it's behaviour change. And so it needs to, get alongside the people on the factory floor, literally, and say what would actually work here. If we've got one skip here, we actually really need 4 smaller wheelie bins because, most of our waste is cardboard, then the second amount of our waste is flexible plastics. You need dedicated bins rather than just one big bin that everything goes. And a good example of that is that recently my stepdaughter and her husband in Pongana, they a very well-known local building company, which I won't name, because they're probably no different to any other company. The waste skip at Charlotte and Jono's house, it was full of cardboard boxes, like, the box that the oven came in and the plastic bag liner and either the polystyrene foam or that moulded cardboard stuff that, that protects it. That was what was the most stuff in the skip. And that's called construction and demolition waste. It's actually not, is it? And there were a few things like the offcuts of a few tiles and a few bits of tiny offcuts of timber, but most of a house that is built today, it's actually pre-assembled, isn't it, in a factory? And so mainly it's nail gun, those lines of nail gun plastic from the leftovers of the nail guns, and all that sort of thing. Most of it is actually not a hazardous item that must go to a safe place called a sanitary class 1 landfill. Most of it is stuff that could be easily diverted and is an actual resource. Okay, so I've said enough. Yeah, Angela's going to do the conclusion.
So just to finish, we strongly support Council's goals of this engaging with a circular economy and kaitiakitanga, and also the community engagement that's addressed in those Council's goals. And to further these goals, we strongly encourage councillors to push for specific resourcing for waste minimisation activities, and also that they adopt something like this community-based social marketing approach that's really focused on behaviour change and that engages people from the bottom up, because that's what research has shown makes a difference in terms of actual behaviours. We ask that you develop, and this is, I guess, staff rather than councillors, but that you develop concrete waste minimisation targets and measures so that and that are kind of more positive and uplifting. So I noticed, for example, that one of the measures from the last plan, the one that ended in 2022, was a reduction in the number of complaints. Now, who's going to get inspired as a community member of how can I contribute to this goal? Whereas if we had a goal in there that was about like finding a baseline to start with, and then how many more people are getting enthused and encouraged and kind of feeling good about how we as a community are doing around how we manage waste in the district. Something that really engages people and inspires them and pulls them on. It's more like a carrot than a stick. In terms of targets, strongly encourage council to actually put a line in the sand, whatever the other expressions are, stakes in the ground or whatever, around let's actually set ourselves a point to be accountable to and say, we, by the 2028 end of this plan, we will have achieved at least 75% diversion from landfill of the bit that council manages, the blue bags and so on. Why not do that? Make a commitment to it. Rick thought, any of you that watched the submission, the presentation, that the Fielding Against Incineration webinar or public meeting, online public meeting, Rick Thorpe from Raglan Zero Waste pointed out that within 2 years we could achieve that. Raglan's had 20 years track record of refining the systems that get a community to that. They've had many years of helping other communities, other areas to get these systems established. So they've kind of got a recipe for getting a community to that point much more quickly than they were able to. Something like 10 areas within Auckland City Council, or rather they've contracted Rick to help 10 areas within Auckland City Council to get these programs up and running and to achieve that kind of diversion rate. It's doable, and what's more, it's doable in a shorter time than it would take to build a pyrolysis plant, especially if you add in the consents and the environment courts and all of the delays that will happen in the process of doing that. So yeah, we encourage you to take a bold stance on this. It's a scary step to take because it means that you have eyes on you to see whether you are making the progress. But I think there's ways of that becoming a really positive and active challenge for the community to engage with you. I think part of the challenge is that Manawatū ratepayers kind of almost see themselves as customers and you as the business that's offering them services, rather than as members who contribute to the overall outcome. And so I think by kind of wording the targets and the measures in a way that is more engaging, that there's a lot of potential there to get more involvement. So then it's not just up to you to achieve the target, because obviously you can't. You know, individually you may well be doing all the right things with your rubbish, but it takes all of us to actually achieve these targets. So also, you know, concrete measures around, can we reduce the amount of contamination in the recycling? Can we reduce the amount of recyclables that are put out in the equivalent of blue bags, whatever you adopt in that area? So, you know, making it really practical, we can really see whether we're making progress on this. I want to again push the point of a dedicated role. I just find it really hard to kind of see how progress can be made any different from the progress over the last 6 years without somebody having it as their job description to make progress happen on this. Like, you guys know more from behind the scenes, but as an outsider looking and just reading your documents, it looks like very little was achieved over the last 6 years. if anything, there was a slight backwards move in terms of percentage diversion. That, although I have to acknowledge the really important and big thing that isn't in those plans and reports, but the council has done, which is create the resource recovery park. I can never remember the whole name, but you've created this amazing facility that has the capacity to take this sort of vision forward. And ironically, doesn't kind of get much mention in the documents, but we know that happened and that was significant. In terms of what's in the documents, last plans targets were very minimal, there was no boldness in it. And at this time in history, we can't afford not to be bold. Our grandkids' survival depends on what we do. And while you might feel that you're just little old Manawatū and it's only a tiny place, it all adds up. And I think we create like an avalanche of change. I don't know if any of you were present at online at the Ngāti Kauwhata's. They did a online public meeting with a speaker from Zero Waste and a speaker from Bioplant on Tuesday night. It was a really, really valuable meeting, I thought. And Dr. April Bennett, who moderated that discussion, she ended the evening with a phrase, something like, just imagine if Fielding could become the zero waste town. So, because people will say, like, what are the alternatives? Just imagine if Fielding could become the zero waste town. We've got all we've got so many available resources. Like we've got Massey sort of virtually on our doorstep. So in terms of the opportunity for innovation, Massey's got a zero waste department. They've got staff who are, are available to communities. I understand that that department is involved in helping Palmerston North City Council with their waste minimisation plan and so on. So we've got these skilled people on our doorstep that we could engage with and have as part of this positive vision. Mayor Helen, I've picked up your enthusiasm for this kind of stuff a number of times when we've been in meetings before, and it feels an achievable thing, more so for Fielding than for, I don't know, somewhere over on the East Coast or somewhere, because of this proximity and this potential partnership with Massey. And we've got some good stuff happening already, like the building crushing thingy and so on. So I think there's a really good platform to move forward in a positive way with this.
Thanks, Angela.
Can I just add one sentence, and that is that we're really keen to meet regularly with MDC staff and councillors that are working on this. I don't think it's okay to just give a submission and come back in 6 years' time and say, oh, you didn't do that, or we'll hopefully celebrate. I think we'd really welcome the opportunity for ongoing engagement. I do see this as a thing with like a partnership with community, and as you've said in your goals. Okay, thank you. Sorry for going over time.
Thank you, Angela, Roma, and so thank you for taking the time, for the passion and the vision that you have around this, and for some of the really positive, proactive ideas that you've put on the table, some of which I know internally we've been talking about anyway, but that just inspires us to take that a bit further. So I thank you for the work that you've done and for joining us this morning, and we'll deliberate on these and make some final decisions and come back to you. And yeah, I agree about having regular conversations. Thank you. Thanks.
Your worship, if I may, Rachel Lane's due to come up shortly, but is under pressure time-wise. I'm just wondering if it's if you could just entertain the idea of bringing this.
Environment Manawatū, you're here with us. Do you have to rush off, or are you happy to swap our order to hear another submitter who has to leave? You need to leave as well. We will have a look at your submission, Rachel. And if you have any notes that you'd like to leave with us or send through, please appreciate that. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Environment Network Manawatū, we're on page 155. Welcome, and thank you for making a submission.
Oh, no, thank you. So I'm here on behalf of Environment Network Manawatū. We've got a lot to do with Palmerston North City Council, but we haven't had a lot to do with you, so I'll just give a bit of a background around that. So we have 62 member groups in our network, and approximately half of them, or 32 of them, identify as being within the Manawatū District, as opposed to Palmerston North. So these include biodiversity, river catchment groups, and community resilient groups. And there's more information about our network found in our submission if you're interested. So my role within the Environment Network is the Source to Sea Coordinator and Plastic Pollution Challenge Coordinator. So I have a lot to do with biodiversity groups, river catchment groups, and we go out and do river cleanups with volunteers coming in the weekends. So my background is actually chemical bioprocess engineering, with a focus on waste minimization, recycling and upcycling. So I operate a small business helping organizations understand and reduce their waste, creating product stewardship, waste collection schemes, and conducting research and development of new recycling technologies around waste into new construction materials. So I've also worked with several large food producers and with councils around waste management and reduction, both directly and through initiatives such as Sustainable is Attainable and Hawke's Bay. And recently I've consulted with Gisborne District Council on their latest emissions reduction plan and their proposal for the GDC Resource Recovery Centre through Civil Assist, where I also work. So I just wanted to cover a few of the main points in our submissions. So one of the main ones, one of the first ones, sorry, is fly tipping. So obviously working in the rivers and streams picking up rubbish, this is a pretty significant issue. So we'd like to see more emphasis on this and active plans in place to reduce fly tipping. So, and we'd also like to see a punishment that fits the crime, including the externalities, not just the cost of recovering this waste from where it's dumped. So looking up online, there's a $400 fly tipping fine. I believe that City Council, Palmerston North, might be a bit more in the thousands, but it's still relatively low. So if you think about the fact that if someone fly tips, 100 times and they're caught, a couple of those times and pay the fine, it's already, a lot cheaper for them to just fly tip than go to the dump. So having, something in the tens of thousands or even greater would actually discourage people from fly tipping in the first place. It needs to be something quite significant. So also needs to be a lot more investigation into understanding why people are not taking that waste to landfill. What are those barriers? Is it a cost? Is it a convenience thing? And actually trying to overcome those barriers. And some strategies that we've suggested could be having things like inorganics collection days like they do in Auckland. Having amnesty waste days. So if there's people that can't afford to actually, take large waste items to landfill, a day where they can have no questions asked, just drop off the waste, or free pickup of larger waste items for people that don't have trailers. So I'd also like to talk about the next point is the energy to waste. So not talking about all the pyrolysis, but from a waste perspective. So being an engineer, I actually understand the value in pyrolysis and the benefits over landfilling. But I think in a waste perspective, it's very easy to mismanage this waste going in. And like previous group said, there can be that attitude, if it can go to pyrolysis, may not be recycled. So I think if that's to go ahead, there needs to be a really rigorous kind of sorting process to ensure that no waste that can actually be recycled or recovered ends up going into that pyrolysis, which would give more emphasis on the circular economy. Another thing I'd like to talk about is waste audits and actually understanding your waste as a district. So looking at your previous district plan, your waste minimisation plans, management plans, and the current one, a lot of that data is actually based off other regions' waste data or the Palmerston North City Council data, and some of it is quite outdated. So I think actually understanding your district's waste specifically could actually change the way that waste is dealt with. So basing it on other regions and historic data is a good start, but I think, you know, you could have a lot more accuracy. You could have quite different situations here in Manawatū District. So another thing is I'm sure you guys are aware of the MFE transforming recycling. So that's a scheme that's been proposed to nationally tackle the recycling industry and try to get that, you know, in a better place. So, I mean, in our opinion, this is looking pretty promising. We've had a submission through to that, and we believe that it will go ahead in some form, not necessarily as it's been proposed or drafted, but there probably will be some of those things go forward. So we recommend that serious consideration go into this current waste minimisation and management plan to actually account for any changes that may occur at a national level, to actually future-proof yourself from this. So this includes things like the separation of organic waste, which will significantly reduce the emissions associated with the waste, but also provide a valuable resource in compost and energy. So I think looking at that scheme and actually thinking about what you could do now so that you don't have to then change later. So also the waste education services, we strongly support that. I think this is very important. We've been doing a bit of work around that. We know that you guys have been doing a bit of work around that, and we'd encourage, you know, keep that going and even go harder, because, you know, teaching the kids is really going to make the impact down the line. Again, kind of future-proofing us as a society. And around the proposals that you guys have put forward. So we think that trying to make it as easy as possible for the residents would kind of be the best outcome there. So small changes like having bins instead of bags kind of takes the responsibility from the residents and the decisions away from their everyday. So it makes it easier to do it rather than not. So I'm not sure if you guys have ever been to the supermarket, forgotten to buy bags, and then it's like, oh, what do I do with my waste now? You know? So actually, the annual cost to each household is relatively small. So they might have to pay a little bit extra in the rates, but then it's not something that they have to consciously think of all the time. So it actually makes it a lot easier for the households, instead of having to, you know, spend that little bit of extra grocery money, a bit of extra thought into that. And also having a consistent recycling across the region, which also feeds back into the transforming recycling you know, mindset that they're trying to put forward, is that if it's consistent, you can roll out, you know, a lot of, you know, spread the right message through media, advertising, marketing, and actually say, you know, this is what we're doing as a region, rather than this place is doing this place is doing that, and it can get quite confusing. And then people just end up, you know, doing what's convenient for them instead of the right thing. So I think having a consistent message, just to avoid any confusion. And that's me. So thanks for your time.
Excellent, thank you. Now, apologies, I missed your name at the beginning.
Oh, Nelson Harper.
Nelson Harper. Thanks, Nelson. Thank you. Open that up for any questions. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you very much, Nelson. Lots of very constructive ideas there. I was just wondering if I could ask Hamish, the government sets the fly tipping fine, don't they? We don't do it ourselves, is that right?
There's a maximum fee that, or maximum fine we can charge. which is about $400. We actually had a tiered system previously, and about 5 years ago, we introduced the maximum charge for basically everything. So flight ticket is flight ticket, but we are constrained by what we're allowed to charge on that space.
So we all need to lobby government to get that amount being much higher.
Yeah, because I mean, it costs what?
We would if we could.
$400 for one trip to the landfill sometimes, so.
We would if we could.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
Thank you. Anything further? Thank you, Nelson. Thank you for the work that you do in this space, for making your submission and coming here today, and some of those really good suggestions there. So appreciate that. And so we will deliberate on all of our submissions and come to some conclusion, which we will let you know about.
Awesome. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Now, we were to have Rachel. Rachel's had to leave, but I will make sure that I get Rachel's notes to her, match her submission and get those out to us so we can have a look at those.
Your worship, I do have a message from Rachel, which will only take 2 seconds to read out to reinforce, if I may. Reason for speaking to my submission, I wanted to stress the point that big bins in windy areas need to be properly thought through. Proposal 1 and 2, in brackets. With proposal 3, having recycling bins in the village will disadvantage the wider rural community due to the removal of the MRCs, especially with the recycling centre being on the opposite side of the town to most of the villages, brackets. So it's a destination rather than something we do on the way, close brackets. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and we can refer that back to her. She's raised those points also in her submission, so great. Thank you. So our last speaker this morning, Milton. Milton, would you like to come and join us, please? Come and join us. Milton's submission is on page 64.
I'm sorry to say this to you all, but I've listened in silence for the last hour. My hearing apparently has failed and I haven't realised. However, you've always heard this saying, your time starts now. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I speak to you as an individual and collectively. My reason for being here is not my personal choice, but a tragedy that has occurred. And I go back to Friday, the 22nd of April. I woke in the morning, turned my tap on, no water. Went down to the pump shed, turned the light on, no pumps working, no pressure. Rang up Peter Hislop, who supplied me with 3 single-phase motors over the last 7 years. He came straight out and said, Milton, the pumps have switched off because there's no water. So he reset it, water came. So unfortunately, I had an appointment in Palmerston North and I never got back home till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Only to hear from my wife that there's no water in the house. So I rang up my electrician, Nathan, and he said, because it's a 3-day weekend, he said, I'm on call and I can't come to 6 o'clock tonight. So Nathan came out at 6 o'clock, did the various tests and informed me that my underground power cable had failed. And he said, it'll be at least the 4th of May before I can get back. So with that knowledge, I just ran a flex out from the house and hooked into the pump and we had water. And so on the 26th of April, Tuesday, I attended this building here to seek if I could find my plans of my house so as I could know where the cables were laid. only to be told by the polite people at the counter that the building inspectors only work on a Wednesday and a Thursday. So I said, oh, is Mr. Harris available? He's a very busy man. I said, I understand that. And Shane came out and informed me that the Manawatū District Council had nothing to do with electricity or gas. So I accept that. And with a bit of luck, I might be able to confirm what Shane helped me with. Maybe this one. And this is what Shane said. Hi, Milton. I said I would get back to you today regarding any information on our files regarding electrical contractor that may have worked on your water pumps, electric lines and your property. Unfortunately, our electronic document management system has been down all day and I have been unable to access the files. Our IT teams say that they will have everything back up and running tomorrow. So I will continue the search and get back to you tomorrow. So thank you, Shane. That was 23 days ago, and I suppose the IT team still haven't got it going. So fair enough. Went home on the Tuesday afternoon and I thought, well, I know where the cable goes into the pump shed. So I rang up my brother-in-law and he came at 8 o'clock the next morning and we started digging. We dug down 12 inches and the pipe went from vertical to horizontal. We dug along 2 feet on a white 50mm pipe and out came the black cable. So Graham kept on digging. We dug another 3 feet and then we found a 2-inch alkathene pipe with the black cable coming out of it. And Graham said, as far as he was concerned, there should always be an orange cable above these sort of things. So we got to the fence and we carried on digging and we got to within 12 inches of the house. And then the cable turned and went parallel. Well, of course, there was no way of where the cable was going to end, so we knocked off. So I rang up Nathan and said, well, look, we've got the trench dug. And he said, I'll be out, as promised, maybe the 4th of May. So on the 28th of May, I came back to this building to see if I could speak to a building inspector, only to be told that he was having a late morning tea break. So I said, oh, well, that's understandable these days, anything can happen. And so on the table there was the statement of proposal. So I read it. And I read it again. I thought, I must remind you people that this organisation started 33 years ago. You've had 11 3-year terms and you've had 5 6-year terms to do core business. Come on, council, what's going on here? I just could not understand it. So I filled in the submission, and that's why I'm here today. I am at a loss to understand why in this submission you make a quotation that you've handled something like 2,807 tonnes of rubbish. There's no indication here of what that costs or what you spent. How can you make an honest submission to a council when you're fed this? I know I live by a country kindy, but I'm beginning to have serious doubt on the ability of some of the actions that happen here in the Manawatū District Council. I think I've made my point very loud and clear. And although I've got a few minutes left, I'd just like to leave you with this thought. You have a responsibility to the residents and ratepayers of this area. It's my understanding that each and every one of you do your best at the time. But I think it's time now that we took a look in the mirror and just see where we're going. Because finally it says on the submission here, are we going in the right direction? Well, I don't know which direction you're heading to, but it certainly doesn't suit my way of thinking. Thank you for your time and listening to me. And I just wish you well for the future elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Milton. Thank you for making a submission and coming today. Is there any final question for Milton? Councillor Quarry.
Thank you, Your Worship. What is your understanding as to the depth that power cables, underground power cables are supposed to be set at?
Well, I haven't been speaking to Andrew, but I told Nathan that it was to be replaced exactly as he found it, because this place here has got 3 code of compliance certificates. And he said, Milton, I can't do that. He said, you realise that you've had cowboys on this job? And I said, well, I didn't know that. He said, we as the electrical union we certify our own work. And he said, I cannot replace what's here because it doesn't conform. So I said, well, what's the problem? Well, he said, first of all, we've got to dig down another 2 feet. This was on the 4th of May when he came, and he came at midday. And it took him to 4:30 to dig down another 2 feet to make the regulations right. When we got into the pump house, he also said that he said, I can't replace it like this because the present rules are that it's got to be 1.9, the switches have got to be 1.9 above the concrete floor.
Excuse me, Your Worship.
I can assure you that the job that Nathan did for me complies with the
Excuse me, Your Worship. Point of order.
Yeah.
Order.
Thank you, Milton. Thank you. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for your submission. We appreciate that. And thank you for your time. And we hope that you resolve your power issue. So thank you.
It's all complete and finished.
It's all finished. Great. Thank you.
But it wasn't my desire to be here to talk about waste. I've made my point. There's no pleasure in getting old.
You take care.
Yeah, it's always in my back pocket. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. You take care. Okay, we will take a 15-minute break for morning tea, please.
Program.
Right, so we'll reconvene our meeting and we're up to Officers Report 11.2. We're on page 59. These are the Lagoima requests from 24th of March to the 5th of May. They're there in front of us. We've read those. Kathy, is there anything? There you are. So welcome, and I'll leave it to you. Anything that you want to highlight, and then we'll take questions.
I suppose the key thing just to highlight, which is why in the report it has a couple of test report test documents sort of reported in the table, is that we've been updating our processes to make sure that we're really tidy in this space, and that's since January, and we haven't missed a deadline to date, so we're really pleased with that, down to some really good work that Katie McKay has been doing. But unfortunately, because we wanted to check that the process was working, yes, it's recorded that we've had 2 test documents in that table on at 2.6. We have since closed off the Forest and Bird Laguma, and actually it's been quite quiet the last few weeks, which I shouldn't say because it probably will create a flurry of activity now. But we have 2 Lagumas still in progress. One is about Three Waters and what consultation do, sorry, not Three Waters, what consultation do the council undertake before joining the communities for local democracy? And then one is around processing details for building consents. So they're still in progress.
Thank you. So any questions of Kathy in regards to any of those requests? Councillor Ford.
The first one, Kathy, just quite often these questions will end up being used as ammunition against council sometime in the future. So I'm just thinking that it could have been quite useful for us to have seen the table that was attached, so that it's good to know the information that we're giving out. So I looked through that with great interest and then really didn't learn anything. So but I'm sure we'll.
So are we able to have that table circulated to us?
Yep.
Yep. I think, yeah, from time to time there are requests that Councillor Ford makes a good point. Would be good for us to have seen the full answer.
Yep, that's absolutely fine. We can work that into a process.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, reasonably straightforward. So we have a recommendation on page 59. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Yes, Your Worship, happy to do that if it suits. That the report detailing requests for information received under the Local Government Official Information Meetings Act 1987 from the 24th of March to 5th of May 2022 be received.
Thank you. Have a mover. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hadfield. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Right, page 73, we move to the minutes from our community committees and youth council. So we've received these, we've read them, and so not going to go into any detail, but just go through each liaison councillor to run us through any highlights they may wish to bring up. Councillor G. Taylor, Youth Council.
Yes, the first set of minutes for the 19th of April was purely we didn't have quorum, so that was a non-existent meeting basically. Fast forward to the next set of minutes, which obviously still a little bit dated, but basically the gist is that we are heading towards planning for the colour run on the 31st of July 2022. So that is coming up shortly in the middle of winter. So fingers crossed it's not a bad weather day. I don't know how we got so lucky last year. So hopefully we can get that ticked off. Young Achievers Awards planning and sponsorships well underway now too. And then they are, so Youth Week was last week, but we didn't do any events for it because we were hoping to do the colour run, but obviously we couldn't due to the fire brigade don't come out in orange. So that's our issue there, is that we need to be in green for them to be able to come out to public events like that. So fingers crossed, 31st of July, we are in green. We're going ahead with planning anyway, so we can get that underway. And so next year's Youth Week, we are just planning what we're going to do there. And they've come up with a really cool idea called Don't Drop the Ball on Our Youth. And so that is about going out to schools and getting amongst, so each Blair and Hutsville will go out to schools in the area and sort of do activities and that sort of thing with them. So that's where we're at.
Excellent. And as we go through these, if you have any questions, just let me know. Manawatū, Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, no, nothing further to add really, other than the fact that certain residents up there were most grateful that the Kāriwariwa Road bridge approaches that were prepared for sealing in 2004 have finally been sealed. And as I said at a subsequent meeting to them, I said it's always good to smile and cherish a win. But the Rangi community, we're very grateful that it's finally been done.
Excellent, thank you. Pahongana, Councillor Marsh.
Nothing to add here. That was a pre-December meeting, so yeah, got the cobwebs on it now.
Thank you.
Your worship, may I ask a question,
yeah,
please?
Councillor
Just
Casey.
rewind very quickly back to Manawatū. Just very quickly, do you think there's some confidence that local police up there, through you, Grant, are actually on top of any crime issues? It just seems to be just a little bit of pocket of.
Well, there's been discussion, obviously, and Mark wasn't at the last meeting.
Sure.
Unfortunately, he was at the meeting before. You know, I mean, there've been one or two noise issues, funnily enough. And I have to say, and with a little bit of levity, that playing Barry Manilow and using sprinklers was actually mentioned as a deterrent.
Right.
You know, I think some speeding is still a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, okay.
And I think rural crime's a bit of an issue everywhere.
Yeah, just quite.
Councillor Casey, to be fair.
Yeah.
So, and I guess if we're actually brutally honest, I think it would be no surprise for any of us to, if we made the comment that perhaps our local police are under-resourced.
That's good. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
you. I don't want to hold you around.
Thank you. Moving to Huanui, Councillor Marsh.
Yes, again, very little to report there. They are consulting constantly with Palmerston North City Council about the roads, Kelvin Grove intersections, 3 humps, all down that side through there and into Ashurst. And yeah, just trying to get those submissions in onto either an annual or a 10-year plan.
Thank you. Moving to Halcombe, Councillor Campbell.
No, happy to take that as read. All good there.
Thank you. To Rongatia, Councillor Shaw.
I think everything's ticking along there. There's a few projects underway out there at the moment, stormwater and into the next street for the footpaths. They were very pleased. They've been given larger recycling bins for glass, and that's because these were regularly being overfilled, and that's they're very appreciative of that.
Great, thank you. Kimbolton. Now, we didn't have a council representative at that meeting. That's Councillor G. Taylor, is that yours?
No, it's mine. I forgot.
Sorry, Councillor Quarry.
That was, I completely forgot about that. But I understand there's no issues as such.
Thank you. And also Sampson, Councillor Quarry.
Their concerns seem to be in regard to the speed limit approaching Sanson from Cemetery Road. There's a great concern as to where the positioning of the signs are in regard to entering Sanson, and I understand that's been looked into and discussed.
Thank you. And there was an email out to us from that via Hamish responding to that with some photographs of where the intention of the signs are. Tangi Moana, Councillor Shaw.
A small but dedicated group coming along each month. They've just done a Central Energy Trust grant application for some wall-mounted heaters and appliances in the kitchen. The Tangi Moana Hall is not a council-owned hall, the land's council-owned, but the hall is community-owned. And this weekend, weather permitting, they're having yet another wood chopping working bee with the help of Rangitia Lions. The campground trees keep giving.
Excellent. It's been a great community project.
It has.
Councillor Casey, Rangioti.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, met last night, but just going back to the previous ones, the Kirikiri Road, number 1, there's actually no longer lights now, it's just rumble strips and signage, which is what the community wanted, so that's good. There was going to be lights and all the whistles. And also too, last night they formally accepted their community development plan as well, which is really exciting. So they're starting to plan what long-term plan looks like now and what they're going to feed into as far as request goes.
Great, that's excellent. And do we have, Lynn, through you, do we have a process when our community has completed their community plan that they come and present to council?
Yes, your worship, they're just jumping in, they'll come as soon as they can.
Excellent, great. Look forward to that one. And you're right. Thank you. Councillor Campbell, Humatanga Beach.
Yeah, all good there. Had a good meeting that last meeting. Had a nice message from the chair of the committee about some footpath maintenance which have been attended to recently. So that's good to see. Sometimes that's a bit of an issue, and they had come overgrown again, but the council have cleaned them up very well. So thank you.
Yes, it's good to see that community committee revived and having good attendances as well. So that's great. Our other community committees that may not have met, Kiwitea, Councillor Ford.
Yeah, just pleased to say that we had our first meeting this week, first since September last year. So I have to say I had been a little bit concerned about it, but they, in fairness, they did get fairly well knocked around by COVID. They've also had a number of working bees where they've done quite a lot of painting in the meeting room in the hallway, in the hall, which looks great. They've got a new secretary, and so I've been reassured that they're in good shape.
Excellent, thank you. And the other two, Councillor Hadfield, Glenaroo.
Yeah, Glenaroo again had a meeting a few weeks ago, and that was after almost the first meeting after the cremation one. So it was a little bit back to square one, really, to recap on where they're at and where they're heading. So they've actually got another scheduled meeting next Tuesday, I believe, and they wanted that meeting to go ahead following the chair's meeting for the community governors and council the other day. So I think next Tuesday they'll have another meeting and we'll just see where they take that.
Excellent, thank you. And Apathy.
Yeah, just probably to do with infrastructure is the bottle. The transfer station just gets overflowing with bottles, and there was a ring and Kimbolton has an overflow of bottles too. So I think the infrastructure management knows all about it, but it does seem to be something that needs to improve. Is the transfer station up there with all the bottles just piling out. Other than that, they've got their plans for their whole development, and their got a big sign coming into Apathy, welcome to Apathy, that's all proceeding. Yeah, so basically, yeah, pretty good.
Excellent. Have I missed any community committees out?
There's just Waituna.
Colleton's still not meeting. I think we only ever meet when Graham's got something to tell us. Very frustrating, he doesn't let anybody know. Correspondence is absolutely hopeless, but we'll keep pushing there. Do take the opportunity though to thank Janine for the chair and secretary's meeting at council. Very well thought of, and a lot of people got a lot out of it.
Thank you.
Just the Waituna Council committee wanted me to ask if I could get their hall painted on the outside. So I rang James and he said, yeah, they can do that. So they're very pleased about that. They've provided the paint. And so that's a real plus. And overall, they're just having trouble getting numbers for their civil defence contacts. Hard to get people to give their numbers, phone numbers and that. So they're working through that. So that's basically it.
Excellent. Councillor G. Taylor.
Cheltenham haven't got any minutes there, but just an update there is that I have received an email from the chair, Keith, to say that he is moving to Nelson, and so sadly Cheltenham is on the search for a new chairperson.
Yep, he'll be sadly missed because he's been a mover and a shaker in Cheltenham.
Great amount of effort put in by Keith, to be fair.
Yeah, thank you. And also, yes, I just want to acknowledge our team for the community committees and halls annual meeting. It was a really good meeting, reasonable attendance, and I think, you know, people appreciated the opportunity to come together and get the updates from council, interaction, respond to, you know, is council communicating well enough? Are there other areas? And also be able to share getting together. So the format for that meeting was really good, Lynn. So we can pass on our thanks to Janine.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good meeting. Right, so go back to the recommendation on page 73. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Paul.
Your worship, I move that the council receive the minutes of the community committees and the Manawatū Youth Council meetings.
Thank you. Have a mover. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Councillor Belsky. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. We have no late items, so that brings us to the public excluded business, and I'm happy to move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely the confirmation of minutes from other committees for information and consideration of the Section 17A review, building control services. Seconded, please. Councillor Hadfield. Put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Just take a moment.